So the topic of tonight's presentation, I've entitled "From Brooms to Bananas to Bubblegum" because it sounds interesting, and basically we're going to cover the gamut of things that are processed foods to things that are not, that are more whole foods, holistic foods, as well as those items which are not edible as well. So let's kind of delve into the topic at hand, and let's try to discover together what we can and can't do preparing for Pesach. So I'd like to cover four topics tonight. One is just objectives, is a little bit to understand the background of kosher and kosher Pesach food. Why is it that some of these foods are certified year-round and might be a problem for Pesach? What is it? Why is it even that some of these foods are not certified year-round? Why can't I just have everything? What's the problem? I looked at the back of the panel, and it didn't seem to have anything that seemed to be not kosher. So we're going to discuss that briefly because, as Cy Sims used to say before he went out of business, an educated consumer is our best customer. We're going to talk a little bit about edible items, which ones need kosher Passover supervision, which ones do not need kosher Passover supervision. We'll talk about non-edible items as well, and medicines and nutritionals in terms of what you can or can't do. So let's go into the background. We have over here, Jews are historically obsessed with food. And the question really is, why are Jews so obsessed with food? No matter where you go, the entire Jewish life cycle is based upon food. You go to shul on Shabbos, you've got the Kiddush after services Saturday morning. You've got the Shal Shudas later on. You've got the gala dinners. You've got the men's club breakfast. You've got the sisterhood teas. You've got weddings, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs. You name it. Whatever we do, Judaism is about food. The holidays are about food. For example, Pesach, Passover is coming up now. It's all about the food you can and can't eat. We got to turn over our kitchens. We got to get all new food. Even Sukkot, the holiday Sukkot in the fall, you got to eat the food in the sukkah. You can't even have it in the house. Whatever you go through, even if it comes to Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av, you're not eating the food, but it's still a lack of food. So the entire Jewish culture is, or not even culture, the whole Jewish halacha is based around kosher. Not about kosher, about food. So why? So I just want to share a very poignant thought, and that's Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen in Lublin, the Baal Tzikas HaTzadik, which one of the great Hasidic masters in the late 1800s, talks about in Sefer Bereshis, the first parsha, talks about the creation of mankind. And he says very simply over there, what was the problem? Why was Adam and Eve, why were they kicked out of the Garden of Eden? And he says simply over there, they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden because they ate something they shouldn't have eaten. So therefore, our purpose in this world is to rectify that original sin, that original Aveira. And how do we do that? Since the original sin, the original Aveira came about through food, the way we fix this world, the way to have Tikkun Olam, and a lot of people went to Tikkun Olam, the real Tikkun Olam occurs through food. And that is why, no matter what we do in Judaism, we always have food surrounding us. So that's just, Judaism and food globally. But, what's the point of Pesach? Even Pesach itself, there's Passover, there's so much symbolism with the food. You've got the chametz, which is leavened bread, which refers to both cleaning out your house. It refers to letting things, spoil, quote unquote, where you should have really taken care of them when you had the opportunity. It refers to the sins that people do. You have matzah, which refers to a pristine state where things haven't been allowed to be adulterated by the environment outside. You have the charoset at the Seder table, which refers to the mortar that the Jews mixed in order to build the bricks and the pyramids and the Sphinx and everything else in Egypt, and even the maror that reminds us of the bitter life that the Jews had and how we were able to leave Egypt. So food is a critical and central part of the Pesach, the Passover holiday. So when it comes to kosher food production, I just want to simply for a minute break down what it takes to make that kosher product. And I like to distill it. I know that everyone's talking about distilling these days. A lot of the your neighboring distilleries are considering making hand sanitizer. So we'll get to that a little bit later today. But how are we? I'd like to distill it down into three building blocks of a kosher product. Building block number one is the ingredients. That means in order to create a kosher product, all the ingredients have to be either kosher certified coming in or have to be inherently kosher from kosher-proof sources. For example, if you're using a flavoring in a product, that flavoring has to be kosher certified. If you're using fluid milk, for example, leaving aside the Chalav Yisrael problems, if you're going to, use, fresh vegetables and fruits, barring any type of infestation issues. All those would be acceptable for any source. So the first job we have is to make sure that the ingredients are either, in our case, kosher for Passover or from a kosher for Passover source. The next part of making that kosher food is the methods and processes. We need to make sure that there's nothing impacting the line. There is nothing going on in the facility which might contaminate the kosher for Passover food or the kosher food. That means they can't be running non-kosher. They can't be running kosher but not kosher for Passover. Depends on the temperatures. So one of the jobs of the mashgiach, of the rabbi, when he comes to visit the facility, is to make sure that the lines either are not being shared or there's a proper kosherization methodology put into place. And then finally, it's imperative to have a record of the final products. Anything that has an OU symbol on it, we need to maintain a record of. We currently have a record of over 1 million products that are OU certified, with another 2+ million ingredients globally that are sourced that we keep in our databases to track every single ingredient that's used. As Rabbi Lehrfield mentioned, one of the hats I wear at the OU is that I'm the head of the consumer relations. That means I oversee our hotline, our social media managers, our email systems. When consumers like you have questions and try to go ahead and reach us, and if we don't have a record of that product being listed, whether it's kosher for Passover or kosher in general, we can't guarantee to you, the consumer, that those products are indeed kosher certified. Just to give you an idea of how busy we are this time of year, normally on an average day, our call center averages about 100 phone calls of kosher questions a day. That's an average day. Starting about a month and a half before Pesach, that number jumps to about 200 to 250 calls a day. Right now, we're averaging about 400 calls a day. Next week, that number spikes to, on average, 600 to 700 calls a day. Last year, on the Tuesday before Pesach, the Tuesday before Passover, we logged over 1,200 calls in one day. So you can imagine that you're not the only consumers out there with questions, but we need to make sure that we have that information. Otherwise, we can't verify it to you as the consumer. So let's jump into the food items that might be acceptable or not acceptable for Pesach and Passover. Let's take a look at that. So as you're probably well aware, kosher Passover foods have been around for quite a while. As a matter of fact, the first institutionally certified product that the OU ever certified was Heinz baked beans. And this is actually an advertisement from 1942 in the Pittsburgh Jewish Inquirer, where Heinz was reminding people that although their products are kosher certified by the OU year-round, they are not kosher for Passover. So people should not make the mistake. Even then, we're dealing with 60, 70 years ago. People have to be careful to make sure that they only bought the kosher for Passover condiments and products. So what are foods that might not be used on Pesach? So it really depends on your custom, depending on where you come from. Basically, all across the board, anything that's chametz, that means it's from the 5 grains of wheat, oat, wheat, rye, spelt, and oat, rye, spelt, and barley. Any of that will become chametz even in minute amounts. It cannot be used on Pesach, even if it's a small amount in there. For Ashkenazim, kitniyos or legumes, beans, and the like are also forbidden on the Pesach holiday. They're a little bit more lenient because you could have a benefit from them, you just can't eat them. Those are from the Sephardic background. I don't know how large the Sephardic community is in Memphis. Virtually none. Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Lehrfield. So they wouldn't have a problem eating these kitniyot, but for Ashkenazim, it is a problem as well. And then you have gibrocks, which is a Hasidic minhag, Hasidic custom, where those that come from a Hasidic background tend not to mix any of the matzah with water. Therefore, they won't use matzah meal or any of the like, and they'll be only used, they have their matzah keeper separately, and then they're only using potato starch and fruits, vegetables, and meat over the course of the Passover holiday. So what are things that might be considered kitniyos? We'll just go quickly through a list, and these include, by the way, Rabbi Lehrfield, is this being recorded? Okay, good. Beans, buckwheat, caraway, cardamom, corn, edamame, fennel seeds, fenugreek, flaxseed, green beans, hemp seeds, lentils, millet, mustard, peas, poppy seeds, rapeseed, which has another name also known as canola, so that rules out your canola oil, rice, sesame seeds, soybeans, there go all your soy products, sunflower seeds, and teff. The following are items, I'll just go back to for 1 second if anybody wants just to mull it over for another 10 seconds or so. These are all items which are kitniyos, and therefore, as Ashkenazim, we are not permitted to eat them on the Passover holiday. There are items that might not be kitniyos but require special checking. For those of you that remember chia pets from way back when, chia seeds are actually one of those things, including anise, carob, coriander, cottonseed, cumin, guar gum, locust bean gum, safflower, and saffron. If you use any of those, you either have to buy those that have a special Passover production run, or if it's not kosher for Passover, you would have to go ahead and then check each one of those items 3 times. Basically, you pour them out on a white sheet, go ahead and go one by one through each of them, checking them to make sure that there is no chametz in them, and then repeat the process again. Bracha just pointed out that she thought the flax was okay. The way the OU's research has showed us is the way we do flax is kitniyos. Again, everybody has, CRC app says something differently. I can only represent the OU. I can't represent the CRC. This is what our research and our poskim, our rabbis have determined. So I will leave and throw the ball in Rabbi Lehrfield's court, and he'll have to make an ultimate decision for the folks of the Baron-Hirsch Synagogue. What's the story with flaxseed? The following might be possibly kitniyos. We're not sure, and again, it requires my pleasure, bracha. It requires may not be used amaranth and peanuts. Historically, once upon a time, the OU actually did give a hashgacha for Pesach, a certification of Pesach for Passover on peanut oil. About 20 years when he stopped, and if you'd like to read a fascinating 30-page academic article on it, my first cousin, Rabbi Dr. Zev Eleff, Chief Academic Officer of Hebrew Theological College in Skokie, Illinois, wrote a very nice article on that I could send your way about the historical involvement of peanuts and peanut oil as kitniyos. So here's now the part that everyone's been waiting for. What are some of the things that you can run to the store and buy and not have to worry about Pesach certification? So let's start with milk, one of the basic necessities of a lot of people out there, and that is that milk would be acceptable. Any milk, plain fluid milk, even if it says vitamin A and D fortified, would be fine before Pesach. There is a slight chance that the vitamin A and D that's inside of it may be chametz. However, it is nullified, it is bottled in the regular milk, and therefore if you buy it before Pesach, there's absolutely no problem whatsoever. However, if you run out of milk on Pesach, that does pose a problem, and you can only purchase milk that was either purchased from a Jewish store where they had it in stock beforehand, or you'd have to buy milk that is labeled as kosher for Passover during Pesach holiday. So I don't know what the milk supply is like in Memphis, but even over here, we're trying to minimize the amount of times we have to go to the store, so we have milk stored in our freezer, and I would recommend just making sure you stock up on the milk you need before Pesach, keeping in mind that we only have 3 days of Chol Moed anyhow, so it shouldn't be that particularly difficult. When it comes to cooking, and I'll get to some other oils in a second as well, all regular extra virgin olive oils are acceptable for Passover and bearing regular certification. That means you don't have to spend time looking for additional oils, but again, it's the extra virgin olive oil with the OU certification. Any of those, the Bartoli's or whichever ones you come across that has an OU on them, as long as they're extra virgin olive oil, they would be acceptable for Pesach. Looks like Bracha just sent the comments about using peanut oil in her home. Like I said, though you gave a certification on it until about 20 years ago. So it's a fascinating read when you have time about what exactly happens to peanut oil. But again, going back to the oils for a second, extra virgin olive oils would be acceptable as long as they have that regular OU symbol on them. There's some other oils that people have asked me about. One is coconut oils. Any virgin coconut oil, that's the raw, unprocessed coconut oil, would also be acceptable for Pesach, for Passover, so long as it has regular certification. And the Chosen Foods brand avocado oil would also be acceptable for Pesach, for Passover when bearing the regular OU symbol. So you have quite a few oils to choose from when you're cooking for Pesach. If the other kosher for Passover oils are not available, you have the extra virgin olive oils with an OU on it. You have any of the virgin coconut oils with the regular certification, as well as any of the Chosen Foods avocado oils with an OU on them as well. In terms of beverages and the like, any bottled water would be acceptable for Pesach, would be acceptable for Passover. The same applies to all unflavored seltzer. All unflavored seltzer does not even need a hechsher for Pesach, doesn't need any hechsher whatsoever. Any unflavored seltzer or any unflavored bottled water would be acceptable for Pesach. I will caution you, though, with the bottled water. We see a growth in the health food industry, and a lot of the waters, such as Smart Water from Coca-Cola, has various minerals and additives that are put into the water. The problem with that is that the way they dissolve those minerals and those vitamins into water is that they use a tablet, which the binder is conceivably chametz. So again, the same rule would apply for bottled water with additives, that if you buy it before Pesach, it's fine. But if you have to buy bottled water on Pesach, make sure that you buy a bottled water that has no additives to it. There is no difference between purified, distilled, or natural water. It's just a question of how they processed it. Each of them has a slightly different taste to it as well. But again, if it's just a plain unflavored water, it's fine for Pesach. If it's got the vitamins added, buy it before Pesach. If it's unflavored seltzer, you're good to go. What about salt? Salt would be acceptable from any source, again, even without hashgach on it, provided it's uniodized. The process used for adding iodine and bonding the iodine to the salt uses either a kitniyos or a chametz type of additives. So therefore, we're only recommending salt that either is kosher for Passover listed on it, and believe that most of the Morton salt is kosher for Passover, as well as a lot of the Cargill diamond crystal salt. But if it's uniodized, there's no iodine in it, it's just regular table salt or regular kosher salt or regular sea salt, that would be fine from any source. I'll get to some more spices in a little bit. But then the question always comes up, what's the story with nuts? You know, I need my nuts. We have to make our charoset. We need it. It's an important part of our brownies. It's a critical component of our health. So you can tell me what's driving you nuts. I do charge extra for that. Or you can just talk to Rabbi Lehrfield, who, as your rabbi, doesn't get paid any extra for being driven nuts. The story with nuts is like this. I already mentioned and we discussed peanuts. Raw nuts in their shell, again, raw nuts in their shell do not require Passover certification. As a matter of fact, if they're raw nuts in their shell, they don't require any certification. Let's say they're shelled, that means that the shell's been pulled off of them. So long as they're both raw and have no preservatives listed as an additive. Those preservatives might include BHA, BHT, THBT. Basically, there are different types of additives. Those require special certification. But if it's a shelled nut that does not have anything added to it, it's just raw nut out of its shell, that would be fine when bearing the regular OU symbol. Pecans so that means you have your almonds and your pistachios, your walnuts, your filberts. Pecans are a little bit different. Pecans that are whole or halved are acceptable, but the midget pecans and the pecan pieces require Passover certification because the way that the midgets and the pieces are produced, they use an ethyl alcohol to dissolve them and grind them up, and that could conceivably be chametz. So therefore, unless it has a kosher for Passover listing on that label, only the whole pecans or half pecans, the midgets and pecan pieces would be a problem and would require special Passover certification to be used. Additionally, some people like to use the flours. The flours can be a little more complicated. I will discuss that a little bit more when we get to some of the spices because they're more similar. What about coffee? Blanched, it would be a problem. Chopped nuts, again, would be the same as I mentioned before. If it's just raw, not blanch is a type of cooking, so that would be a problem. If it's raw, chopped nuts, other than pecans and obviously peanuts, as we discussed, then it would be fine. So going to the coffees, so I really should revise the slide. Regular ground coffee. I'm not talking about the instant coffees. I'm talking about if you like to make coffee in your coffee maker at home. All regular coffees are acceptable, meaning that they're not decaf, are acceptable when bearing the regular OU symbol. Not flavored. Any type of flavored coffee would require kosher for Passover certification, and there are very few kosher Passover flavored coffees. But any type of regular ground coffee, and there are a lot of blends. I might say Rainforest and Java and Breakfast and Jet Fuel and Coffee Shop and Cop Special, all those just regular coffee, roast coffee beans. So as long as they're just either the whole bean or ground bean, that's fine. We do not recommend getting your coffee ground at the supermarkets because they do ground other beans which are flavored, and that could then make your beans that are ground after that chametz as well. So if you're going to get regular coffee, either whole beans or prepackaged ground regular coffee. In terms of decaf, decaf uses ethyl acetate, which is a grain derivative to decaffeinate the beans, and it's either kitniyos or chametz, and therefore requires special certification, supervision for the Pesach holiday. In terms of the instant coffees, they use maltodextrin as a flow agent. Maltodextrin could also be either kitniyos or chametz, and therefore instant coffee needs special certification for Pesach. Now, the good news is that if you go to our website, and I'm actually going to put it on the chat right now, it's oupassover.org. We have a search engine that's there. It's also available to, I would give a shout out to the Maxwell House Coffee, but Maxwell House is certified by the OK, and it's a different agency, but thank you, Paul. Anyhow, in terms of the coffees, if you go to our website, oupassover.org, or download our OU app, OU Kosher app, you can actually search for the Kosher Passover products. There's numerous products over there that are listed as acceptable for Passover, even without special certification. For example, a lot of the Folgers coffees, there's a Folgers instant coffee that is acceptable for Pesach, acceptable for Passover, just bringing the regular OU as well as the regular Folgers non-decaf coffee. So there are availabilities out there of regular coffees, the Folgers, both of the instant, both the regular and the decaf, that are acceptable for Pesach without any special certification. And again, you can go take a look there, and there's a whole bunch of others that might be acceptable as well. In terms of K-Cups, I don't know how popular Keurigs and K-Cups are in Memphis. A couple years ago, I gave a presentation in a certain Midwestern town, which shall remain nameless, and I talked about using K-Cups and Keurigs. I'll get to, let's just hold, someone's asking about lactose-free milk. Let's just hold off on that till we get to medications and nutritionals. Okay, so Scotty, if you don't mind just reminding me later, thank you. In terms of the, I lost my train of thought now.
You're talking about Keurigs.
Oh, Keurigs, yeah. So I was at a small town in the Midwest. They flew me in, and there was a joint, it was between the local school, the local shuls, and the JCC. That was held at a magnificent JCC. It was really a magnificent event. Unfortunately, they forgot to advertise the event. So attendance was, they set up for a few hundred people, and everyone's like, oops, we forgot to advertise. Anyhow, so for the few that the brave and the proud that were there, I mentioned Keurigs, and the entire audience's eyes kind of glazed over, and they had no idea what to talking about. But I believe that technology has evolved since then, and most people are aware of what Keurigs are in today's day and age. So in terms of the Keurigs, you can go to our website, oupassover.org, and actually discuss how to kosher it. You would have to kosher your Keurig before you have to, kosherize it for Pesach or Passover. If you were to, or you could just buy a new one and keep that as your Pesach dedicated one. And you'll go to our website, oupassover.org, that has numerous K-Cups, the pods that are used for it, to go ahead and, thank you, Rabbi Lehrfield, that are acceptable on the search engine, our product search engines that are acceptable for Pesach. So there's plenty of Keurigs that are there as well. So no one should have to go hungry without a cup of coffee to keep them up at the Seder. So what about bananas? We kind of mentioned that before. What's the story with them? So it's interesting to note that those, I don't know how many people in Memphis come from a Hasidic background, but the prevalent custom among Hasidim is that they actually will not eat any food or vegetable that they cannot peel on Pesach, on Passover. So those that come from that even if you don't normally peel it, like a tomato, they will peel the tomato on Pesach based upon the ways. This is really not a lecture in terms of how it evolved, but that's what their custom is. But most people that are not from a Hasidic background, any fresh fruit, any fresh vegetable would be acceptable. I just caution you in terms of if you're using, different types of lettuce, that they may be such as Boston lettuce, romaine lettuce, and the like. They may have heavy insect infestations. So either you'd have to see if there's any that are available with kosher certification for them, or if you know how to mitigate the problems, which your rabbi can help you in that regard as well. In terms of frozen fruits and vegetables, so frozen vegetables are often washed in water that contains anti-foaming agents, and those anti-foaming agents are not appropriate for Passover use. So therefore, we cannot recommend any frozen vegetables. Not only do they sometimes use an anti-foam that is chametz stick, but a lot of times, believe it or not, the same lines that they're packing frozen vegetables on, they're packaging pasta products, and there are documented cases where people have found pasta pieces inside of their frozen vegetables. So because of that, we cannot recommend any frozen vegetables for Pesach unless they have a special kosher for Passover certification on them. However, these issues are not a concern for frozen fruit, and therefore, if you have just plain frozen fruit with no additives, that would be acceptable for Passover even without a Passover certification. But again, for those things that require checking, such as, let's say, strawberries and the like, make sure that at least has an OU certification on those frozen strawberries. What about frozen fish? So a lot of times we get it. This year it's a little bit less because people just aren't shopping, but somehow Costco manages to figure out when Passover is, and they put all their frozen fish on sale. And usually the most common question we get is, can I buy the frozen Kirkland Atlantic salmon or the wild salmon for Passover? So I have great news for you. And that is that the Kirkland Atlantic farm-raised salmon is acceptable with just the plain, oh, I spelled that wrong, with a plain OU symbol, as well as the Kirkland wild salmon is acceptable if you wash it off. Not only that, but I'm going to clue you into a couple of secrets, which are also available on our website. And that is that the following other frozen fish are acceptable with a regular certification. They do not require special kosher Passover certification, including 365 everyday value Atlantic salmon, Blue Circle Atlantic salmon, Canadian Fishing Company sockeye salmon fillet, Changing Seas Atlantic fillets. From Costco, if you buy the fresh tilapia, the fresh salmon, the Full Circle Wild Alaskan sockeye salmon fillets, the Keta salmon fillets, the Gourmet Delight salmon fillets. Again, the Kirkland signature skinless, boneless farmed Atlantic salmon portions, the skinless, boneless wild sockeye salmon portions, the tilapia loins, the Members Mark All Natural Tilapia, New England Kosher, pink salmon portions, Open Nature, Alaskan sockeye. Okay, there's a lot over here. And the Wellesley Farms from BJ's, farm-raised Atlantic salmon, the skinless, boneless farmed Atlantic salmon portion, the wild sockeye salmon. So all these would be acceptable. Someone asked about the loins. Here you go. I'm just putting that link up there on the chat so that everyone can kind of take a look and see which frozen fish are okay. If it's going to be fresh fish, I know, is there a fresh fish counter in Memphis? So I would really advise you to patronize your kosher fresh fish counter. Fresh fish is easy to get. If they run out, they should be able to just run to the next non-kosher counter and get more. So really, recommend that. If not, your rabbi can direct you of how to get fresh fish as well. Okay. Spices. So ground spices require Passover certification. The reason for this is they are processed on equipment that often contains chametz, or the spices themselves can be adulterated with kitniyos or chametz. This goes for anything that comes in a fine powder form. For example, different types of nut flours or all the various spices. So that can be problematic. Therefore, we do not recommend, even if you have limited inventory, we do not recommend spices without kosher Passover certification. Now, what can you do? There are a couple things that you could do. Again, a fresh lemon is acceptable from any source. Actually, the Real Lemon Company lemon juice is also acceptable with just the plain OU symbol on it. So you can always use a lemon flavoring there. As I mentioned before, the plain salt that's uniodized would be acceptable from any source for Pesach. Additionally, you could use whole peppercorns from any source and then grind them yourself, either with a pepper grinder, pepper mill, or sometimes they even sell the self-contained plastic grinders for the pepper. So since that is whole peppers, corns that you can conceivably check beforehand, that would be acceptable for Pesach. But everything else, your onion powders, your garlic powders, your paprikas, your cumins, things like that would be, well, cumin is actually kitniyos, but your basil, your oregano would be problematic on Pesach. So again, we would only recommend those with a kosher Passover certification, but you still have fresh lemon juice, the Real Lemon juice, the salt and the peppercorns that you can use as well. I don't know what the inventory is like locally for the kosher Passover spices, but that usually is enough, especially for Pesach, to flavor a lot of things. Whole spices would be acceptable. Cloves are considered kitniyos, believe it or not, by a lot of people, so that would be possibly problematic. I would recommend speaking to Rabbi Lehrfield about that. Whole spices you could conceivably use, like a cinnamon stick or a bay leaf, things like that, but they would have to be checked. So if they don't have kosher certification and you're using a whole spice, you would need to dump everything out, again, on a white sheet or white tablecloth. Just check them to make sure that there's no foreign matter or foreign objects in them. So yes, anything that's whole will be fine, but anything that's ground is a problem. Same thing with the almond flours and the nut flours. They have to have kosher for Passover certification. I am proud to announce that this year there's I don't know where it's available, but the Barney's Basics brand of almond flour is acceptable for Pesach, for Passover, with the plain OU certification on it. I don't know where they sell Barney's Basics, but I just know that, well, there you go. Nadav's mom just told me that Kroger has kosher for Passover cinnamon sticks. So there you go. But in case they run out or in case you can't find them, that's what you could do. The Barney's Basics almond flour would be acceptable from any source it would be acceptable so long as it has the regular OU, does not require kosher Passover certification. Again, only the Barney's Basics almond flour. Now, let me just go back up for a second. The question also is, what's the story with honey for Pesach? So this year is a little bit of a unique situation where there's what's known as chumrah the pisgah, that it's brought down actually halacha for people to be stringent when it comes to Passover. And a lot of people who may not even normally keep a fully kosher house or have that much connection to Judaism will go to great lengths to at least kosherize their table or their house or their kitchen for Passover. So usually we try to be stringent, and honey is one of those things that there's been reports of adulteration in honey where they tend to use corn syrup and the like. We took a look at this year, especially because of supply chain issues, although they seem to be mitigated. And from my perspective, working with companies, all the companies are actually working full steam ahead with production of food, and the kosher Passover food was already finished months ago for the most part. But in terms of the honey, any honey with a regular OU, as long as it says like pure clover honey or pure honey, would be acceptable for Pesach. So again, honey with a regular OU symbol would be acceptable for Pesach as well. I'm just going to ask if everyone could just hold off on the questions until we could just go through, just because there's a few other things I want to just discuss before we kind of take some questions. And I want to be able to, those people who have other things to do, like get their kids to bed or put themselves to bed, have that opportunity. Because otherwise we probably could be here all night and then some with all the questions that come up for Pesach. In terms of quinoa is relatively new. Historically at the OU, we really didn't want to say one way or another. We didn't certify for Passover. What happened was that a lot of our caterers came to us and said, well, we got to serve sushi on Pesach. And how are we going to serve sushi on Pesach without having quinoa? Because obviously you can't have the rice because that's Kitniyos. So that required us to go and do research into it. And it turns out that quinoa is not related to any legume or bean whatsoever. Rather, it's actually a cousin of the rhubarb. And therefore, there are those that say it's a problem. Many don't hold that it's a problem. However, the issue is the way it is packaged. Quinoa is only grown high up in the Andes Mountains in Peru. And the same lines that they package quinoa on, they package barley on. And that's been documented, and we've had all sorts of contaminations of quinoa. So therefore, if you are eating quinoa or using quinoa for Pesach, we recommend only buying quinoa that has a kosher for Passover certification on it. Conceivably, you could check it. However, the barley and the quinoa look very similar, and they're so small that it's very, very hard to check. So we really recommend, if at all possible, to stick with the quinoa that is certified for Passover. What about wine and alcohol? So not all OU wines are actually certified for Passover use. The vast majority, and I would say about 97.6% of wines out there are actually OU Passover. So you'll take a look and you'll go to the wine section. I don't know if it's at Kroger, I don't know if it's someplace else, wherever they sell local kosher wines. And most of them are certified for Pesach. The really ones that are problem are Manischewitz wines, believe it or not, are all chametz stick. They use corn syrup and a few other sweeteners because they actually sweeten the wine with other additives, not with actual wine. But for the most part, most of the Bartenura, most of the Kedem, most of the Herzog wines, which make up the vast majority of wines in the United States, kosher wines in the United States, are all certified for Passover. But just make sure when you pick it off the shelf, just make sure that it has that OUP symbol on the label. Yep. And what about bubblegum? So everyone's got to have some type of snack. My kids at home who've been going stir crazy have been trying to snack nonstop, which is why we've had to lock the pantry. So processed foods are problematic in general. So like this, the gum, both the gum base, the flavorings, the preserves that are used on it, as well as the flavor mechanisms that are inside of it, all could conceivably be chametz or kitniyos, and therefore any type of processed food like this or candy product would require kosher Passover certification. I neglected to mention one other food product that would not require kosher Passover certification. That would be pure cocoa powder. If you take a look at our website, I believe the Nestle Toll House pure cocoa powder and the Hershey's pure cocoa powder would also be acceptable for Pesach with just the regular OU symbol on that as well. So what about a little bit about some non-food items? So the big question here is, what's the story with hand sanitizer? So I'd like to show you. I was lucky enough to be able to pull a bottle of hand sanitizer off of the shelf. I went back, there was none left. But fortunately, I have a friend who I davened with in shul who runs a janitorial supply company. So he was kind enough to give me for a low price, a gallon of hand sanitizer refill, which I have in my basement. But the hand sanitizer actually is just about 100% alcohol. And that could consider to be a problem for Pesach. Now, there's some good news, and that is that most of the hand sanitizers that are out there use ethanol, and the ethanol is primarily derived from corn in the United States. So therefore, at worst, it would be Kitniyos. But again, there's no problem with using Kitniyos in non-food items. So therefore, there's absolutely no problem if it would be Kitniyos in your hands. On top of that, the alcohol is known as what's denatured. Denaturants are special chemicals that are added to the substance to prevent it from being edible. One of the things that companies have when they're using, like manufacturing Purell, is that in theory, the ethanol that they're using could be sold as a drink to imbibe with. So the way to prevent that is that the federal government requires, it's actually, I believe it's under the domain of the Tobacco and Alcohol Commission, FTC, and they require them to put specific chemicals in it, which now render the alcoholic product as inedible. So now there's a tshuva from Moshe Feinstein who discusses that if you could conceivably make it inedible, then it would still be a problem on Pesach. The problem with any type of denaturants is that in order to do so, require multi-million-dollar equipment to be able to centrifuge the chemicals out of there and now make it edible. So therefore, at least at the OU Poskim and most other Poskim are of the opinion that there is no problem with any type of the alcohol-based hand sanitizers that are available. I just read an article tonight that a lot of the distilleries are losing their tours because no one's visiting, and therefore they're looking to use that excess alcohol to produce hand sanitizers as well. I don't know how they're going to produce that. It could be because of the rush. They will not have the denatures in that. So if you did find something like that that's being produced by Johnny Walker or somebody like that, well, not Johnny Walker, but Jim Beam or some of your friends from up north in Kentucky, that could consider be a problem. So you just need to make sure that it's denatured. But that's still in the experimental stages, so it's not going to be on the shelf before Pesach, before Passover, so you don't have to worry about it. So any of the hand sanitizers would be acceptable for Pesach. The same thing would actually go for soaps as well. Any type of hand soaps would be acceptable for Pesach. What about brooms? Well, please donate your broom. It's not a good idea. People get sick from it. I've seen my kids try to do it. Not a real good idea. What we do recommend for Pesach, though, is since actual pieces of chametz do get stuck in the bristles of the broom, we do recommend a new broom head or a new vacuum cleaner bag or a new Swiffer bottom, depending on what you're using in your house. What about paper goods? This is the question that we get all the time when we get calls. Rabbi, I heard that the paper goods, that paper towels and the paper plates, they have chametz on them and it's the starch holds them together. So I have good news. One is that if they do have starch on it, again, it's only kitniyos, so it's not a problem. Two is that most of them don't really have starch on them. So therefore, the opinion of the OU is that all paper goods are acceptable for use on Pesach. And we'll quickly go through the list of all things that do not require certification for Pesach, and that includes aluminum foil baking pans, baby ointments, bags, whether they're paper or plastic, body washes, bowl and tub cleaners, candles, cardboard, carpet cleaners, charcoal, cheesecloths, conditioners, cork, copper, metal cleansers, cork, cosmetics, except possibly lipsticks, we'll see in a second, cupcake holders, cups, whether they're paper, plastic, or styrofoam, deodorants, detergents, dishwashing detergents, drain openers, fabric protectors, furniture polish, glass cleaners, hair gel sprays and mousse, hair removers and treatments, insecticides, isopropyl alcohol, jewelry polish, laundry detergents, lotions, napkins, paper napkins. If they're actually linen napkins, you're using actual cloth napkins, and as they can actually be moved from non-Pesach use to Pesach use by washing them with detergent on a high temperature. Oven cleansers, paper towels, perfumes, plastic containers. Again, the perfumes also are denatured alcohol, so they're not a problem. Plastic containers, plates, whether they're paper, plastic, or styrofoam. Scouring pads and powders, shampoos, shaving creams and gels, shaving lotion, silver polish skin cream, soap, suntan lotion, talcum powder, baby powder, provided it's 100%. Toilet bowl cleansers, water filters, hand sanitizers. Somebody asked about baby powder. It depends. If it's a talcum powder, yes. If it's some of them have to be all cornstarch, and that speak to your rabbi about, because again, it would be kitniyos, but some people don't like having it because it gets all over the place. In terms of oral hygiene, This is a machlokas, is a dispute among the contemporary halachic decisors, rabbis, about what's the story with oral hygiene. Do toothpaste, mouthwash, and lipsticks require certification year-round even? Do they require certification for Passover? The arguments are both sides. Rav Belsky Zatzal, who was one of our halachic decisors at the OU, was of the opinion that since these touch your mouth, they should be kosher certified. Whereas Rav Shechter Shlita, who is our current postic at the OU, feels that since they're not meant to be food items, therefore you could use any of these items on Pesach. So again, I will throw the ball in Rabbi Lehrfield's court, and he will direct you in terms of if these are or not a problem. So let's discuss a little bit about some medications and nutritionals. Everybody's worried this year about what they can use, especially with coronavirus, unfortunately, going around. So it really depends on the type of medication that you're using. Oh, thank you. Someone remind me, what's the story with meat? I totally forgot about that. So let's just back up for a second, pretend that this is the meat. In terms of meat, any raw meat, chicken cutlets, steaks, veal, whatever the case is, any raw OU certified meat is acceptable for Pesach, even without it saying kosher for Passover on the label. So that means if you stocked up beforehand, or they don't have the kosher for Passover Empire chickens in, or they don't have the kosher for Passover flanken, or chuck that you want, as long as it's whole, or to be cut into pieces, but whole raw meat, that's fine with just bringing the OU. However, chopped meat is a problem. The reason for that is that the way they produce chopped meat is they use it through grinders. Those grinders are also used to make hot dogs. They're used to make kishka, and all of those have binders and like that are chametz inside of them. Therefore, the chametz does get mixed up with chopped meat. So chopped meat would only be acceptable with kosher Passover certification, but the plain raw meats, beefs, chickens would be acceptable for Pesach with just the plain OU certification.
And Rabbi Eleff, just our chopped meat locally, if you buy it from the Kroger deli counter, not the prepackaged meal mark, but the stuff that comes from the deli, those items are in fact the kosher Pesach. That chopped meat is okay for us.
Great. So just discuss a little bit now. I'm just going to, Yehuda just said something about if anyone has matzah to sell, because he doesn't see anyone where he lives for now. I don't know where you are and if there's any ability to find some. Maybe some people that are locally can help you out. I do believe you can actually, believe it or not, buy some on Amazon, and they probably, if you order it now, should get to you in time for Pesach. So that might be an option as well. Getting back to medications, in terms of using medications on Pesach, a lot of it depends on the form of that medication. And they primarily come in three forms. One is a tablet or form. One is a chewable form, which we have in the middle here. And then the other one is in liquid form. So liquid form is really considered edible, and therefore is much more problematic, but we'll get to that in a second. The chewables are also considered, considered something which is edible and also problematic. Pills that are in a tablet format are not food items, and therefore are really not such a problem. We'll get to that in a second as well. So just quickly in terms of our guidance for Passover, is the first thing I have to tell you is do not stop taking any medication whatsoever without first consulting with your doctor, and if your doctor approves, discussing with your rabbi to make a decision not to take medication. Do not stop taking medicine. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Now, if your problem, if you have a problem, again, speak to your physician, speak to your doctor. There might be something available for the course of Pesach, or there might be something that's really not necessary over the course for 8 days. Again, speak to your physician. I get calls all the time from people who are afraid to ask the rabbis and about certain things, and I get all the questions about what about my heart condition medication, and what about my antidepressant medication. Please, we don't want anybody jumping off bridges. I've watched enough John Grissom movies to see people jump off bridges in Memphis. I don't want to see any more. Thank you. In terms of known and tested medications that are a form of a cream, a non-chewable pill, injections are not a problem with Pesach, even if they contain chametz or kitniyos, because they are not inedible. And that really covers the majority of most medications that adults are using. Obviously, if you can get one that's chametz-free, that's an alternative, it's better. It is permissible to grind pills and mix the powder into food items, so a child could take that medication on powder on Passover, but just check with your physician beforehand to make sure that it doesn't lose its efficacy and its potency when you grind it. Liquid medications, chewable pills, and pills that are clove with a glaze, as may be considered a problem, as I mentioned. Also, gel caps may be a problem because they contain non-kosher edible gelatin on the outside. In terms of gel caps, what we really recommend even generally is, again, you speak to your rabbi for guidance. Some people recommend putting in tissue paper and swallowing it, then that renders it inedible. Others will just release the gel cap into an applesauce or something like that, and then eat it like that and get it. But again, also keep in mind that if someone is on a medication, it's only chametz that would be a problem if it's in a food form, and most of the medicinal items are only kitniyos. I will actually send to Rabbi Lehrfield the list of our cough suppressants and cough medications, which are extremely crucial because, unfortunately, of the coronavirus. We did extensive research. Normally, we don't look into other medications that we don't certify, but this year we looked into them and are approving things like Mucinex and Robitussin in liquid form. So I will actually send those to Rabbi Lehrfield so he has that information to help people out. In terms of like nutritionals for the elderly and infirm, they might contain kitniyot, but again, or chametz in minute amounts, which again is nullified or bottled before the Passover holiday. If you buy them for Pesach, it's not a problem. Refer to our website, that oupassover.org website. Click on nutritional items that has a whole list of like benefibers and food thickeners that are available with just a regular OU on them for usage on Pesach. I believe a bunch of the insures are there, a bunch of the thickets are there, so that should cover a lot of people that need supplements for their food on Pesach. In terms of prenatal vitamins, they are chewable. It could be a problem or a swallow pill. Again, it depends on what type of pill it is. I don't know, it's probably not available in Memphis, but Maxi Health has a special chametz-free run that they ran that actually is available and can get you in time for Pesach by ordering online at koshervitamins.com, which is a fantastic website if you're looking for sources of all sorts of kosher health food products and vitamins as well. They're not OU certified, and I'm not getting paid to plug them, but it just happens to be as a resource for the community. What about baby food? So Kitniyot, again, does not apply to children and the ill. We do not recommend using rice or millet, and we do not recommend using the pre-packaged cereals that they have for babies. Those rice, even though it just says rice, a lot of times they contain chametz in it. So we actually recommend, we have a recipe on our website of how to cook the rice separately in a separate pot and create your own baby food for that as well. In terms of actual baby food, the Gerber baby food, carrots and squash are 100% fine and kosher for Passover without any kitniyot in it. The Gerber baby foods that are green beans and peas with the OU are kitniyos, but again, they are not a problem for children. So the Gerber carrots and squash, green beans and peas will be fine for children. There's also a first choice brand baby food, applesauce, carrots, pears, and sweet potatoes have the OUP kosher Passover symbol on them. I don't know if that's something that they have in stock in Memphis or not. Baby formulas, the majority of the baby formulas only contain kitniyos on that. We have a huge list on our website of baby formulas, and I'm going to recommend that you check that approved list to see if yours are there, and there's a good chance that they are indeed there. I would just recommend that you when you mix the baby formulas, do it in the bathroom, not in the kitchen with a separate sponge to wash it out and the like, and not in your regular kosher Passover kitchen. I'm going to take questions in a minute, but I just want to let you know that the OU is here to help you with your Pesach preparations. You can email us at kosherq@ou.org. Give us a call between the hours of 9 to 5. Starting next Tuesday, we'll have expanded hours until 6 p.m. And we'll also be open the Sunday before Pesach from 10 to 12, and Erev Pesach itself, Passover Eve, from 10 till 1 on Passover Eve at 212-613-8241. Again, that's 212-613-8241. Visit our website, oukosher.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn and YouTube. And we do, as I mentioned before, have a very special Passover dedicated site, which can be accessed at www.oupassover.org. So I think that really concludes our presentation over here. So now I'm going to open the floor to those that have questions. I can try to scroll back a little bit here to see what people were asking about. What's going on? Rabbi Lehrfield, did you have, let's just see what we covered over here. Before we discuss. Again, the cocoa powders have to be the one that's listed on the OU website. It's either the Nestle Toll House pure cocoa powder or the Hershey's pure cocoa powder, not the Dutch processed powder. Thank you, Mark, for that tip. David Sachs says perfumes have whale. I don't know anything about that. Meat we discussed. Chopped meat is a problem. Hopefully, Huda can find some meat someplace. I don't know if he's browsing Amazon now, if he had any luck with that. Leniencies for cleaning. Okay, what needs to be cleaned, what not to be cleaned. So we really have, there's a tremendous amount of products out there, of ways to cleanse. I'm going to, we have a couple of videos on our website. We're actually adding more as we go along here. It's on our OU Passover website. Just click on Pesach Prep videos, and we're going one by one of how to kosher a microwave for Passover. Right now we have just an introduction, and they're all like bite-sized 2-minute clips you can watch at your leisure. Right now we have how to kosher a microwave for Passover, as well as how to kosher a fridge and pantry for Passover. By the end of the week, we will have basically the rest of the kitchen listed as well. We do also have inside of our Passover directory, which I mentioned before, our very handy dandy guide. It has the modern kitchen with how to basically kosher for Pesach, everything that's there, and the same article is on our website as well. In terms of leniencies for cleaning, I would tell you like this. Things need to be cleaned, but it doesn't have to be spring cleaning. There's a difference between kosher, cleaning for Pesach and cleaning for the spring. Spring cleaning requires tossing everything in your house outside, scrubbing the place from top to bottom, and your wife driving you crazy for a couple weeks while she goes through every nook and cranny. From a halachic perspective, my wife's giving me looks from across the room. From a halachic perspective, if it's a place that you cannot reach or a place you do not access on Pesach, there is no need to get there. So if you have these nooks and crannies that it's impossible to get into, there is no problem. A lot of times, if it's near food preparation, let's say a little crack or something like that on in your cabinets or on your countertops. So all we recommend then is you can spray some type of like caustic cleanser, and that would obviously take care of any items that might have been stuck in there as well. So that's what, in terms of leniencies for cleaning, if you're not going there, then it doesn't need to be cleaned. If you want to pull out your fridge and clean underneath, you can feel free to do that. But from a cautious perspective, if you're never going underneath your fridge, that is not a problem. Someone's asked about warming drawers and grills. So warming drawers do not get to the 550 temperature required for Libun, which is the way you have to, Libun Kal, which is light burn, which is the way you normally have to kosherize warming drawers. Therefore, the only way to really kosherize a warming drawer for Pesach is if one is experienced with kosher with a torch, which I don't recommend people do at home without being licensed and without having experience. So therefore, unfortunately, we do not recommend any type of warming drawers for use on Pesach. In terms of grills for Pesach, they're also problematic because it gets to be very hard to, it depends on what type of grill you have. If it's an outside grill, we really recommend buying like a disposable one or a cheap one that you just use for Pesach. Otherwise, if it's a gas one, you'd have to change the racks that are in there. You'd have to thoroughly clean the whole thing out. You'd have to turn it on high and let it do that, get it like up to like 550 degrees for like an hour and a half. And it's really hard to get them clean. So I really wouldn't recommend grills either for Pesach. If you really have to grill, again, if it's a stovetop grill that you have, so it would be the same type of koshering like your regular grates, which either you could stick into a self-clean oven or you could turn them on, make sure that everything is completely scrubbed down, sit for 24 hours and turn the flames on high until they start to glow red hot. And you can do the same thing for the grate or replace, again, that grate, get a new replacement grate for Pesach over there. Someone's asking about egg whites in cartons, any OUP. Yes, there's actually quite a few, and not from the quote-unquote Hamish, the Jewish brands. Let me just see if I can pull up quickly over here. In terms of egg whites, I don't know what's available out there, but Deb L Foods manufactures a with an OUP on it, egg cage-free liquid egg whites. There's actually a Super Value Essential Everyday liquid egg whites that has an OUP on it. There are Safeway liquid egg whites with OUP on it. Market Pantry liquid egg whites with an OUP on it. HEB, not over there, I don't think in Memphis, with liquid egg whites with OUP. There's Papetti's frozen liquid egg whites in tubs that has a OUP on it. And then there's also that's something else. So those are the ones that are available out there. And they might be available in your local supermarket. They might not. In terms of Shabbos platters and blechs, again, it gets to be complicated because they don't get hot enough Let me just see one thing over here.
I believe Rav Schechter said that as long as we clean them really well and turn them on for a little while and cover them with tin foil, double wrapped, that they would be okay.
That makes sense. I don't have any guidance for platters. I mean, in person over here, the blechs that we use, we've just bought a new sheet of metal that we've used as a blech and we just have it dedicated to Pesach. Again, it gets to be complicated, but again, in theory, you just put it on the fire, let it get as hot as it can until it basically glows, and then cover it over. One other thing that I would just mention is that it's impossible so those that have glass cooktops for electric ranges, it's virtually impossible to kosher them for Pesach, and the only recommendation we really have is to cover them over and then use it when they're covered over. And that can be problematic as well. So some people recommend getting like a separate, 1 or 2 burner, or Rabbi Lehrfield can guide you in that as well. Any other questions?
What about the lactose-free milk?
Oh, thank you for reminding me of that. Okay, so stories like this. The lactose-free milk with the hashgach on it, with the OU on it, does contain chametz additives. But again, if you purchase it before Pesach, it would not be a problem. So we recommend that you go ahead and you purchase any lactate milk that you need before Pesach. Trader Joe's almond flour would need to have a kosher for Passover hechsher on it, yes.
And just one comment about the milk. Given our situation, I was just at Kroger the other night, and we're limited on milk, and it's hard to pre-buy. So if someone is in difficult straits, it'd be permissible over Pesach to buy just regular milk as well. I spoke to Rav Schechter about that as well.
What about dry roasted nuts?
Dry roast nuts will be a problem only with Passover certification, because anything that's dry roasted, believe it or not, still uses oils and additives sprayed onto it. It's just that the way that they're roasted is in a dry oven as opposed to in a vat. Glass stove tops, just to answer or not, we just mentioned glass stove tops. Glass top stoves cannot be kosher.
Feel free to unmute yourself also if it's easier to ask a question like that. For those of you who are not able to see the chat, so again, if you're calling in, feel free to unmute yourself if you like, if you have a question.
Rabbi, in a situation, I put it on the Facebook Messenger question, but I meant message question. But like, if I have a separate microwave or pots and pans, and I remember how to kosher them and everything, is that acceptable as long as they keep everything completely separate in a different part of the house?
Yes, yes, that's an excellent question. The bottom line is, if you keep things separate for Pesach year-round, you don't need to do anything for that. Just take out your Pesach pots and your Pesach pans and your Pesach microwave from the closet or the box, or wherever you store it, and you're good to go. There's no need to kosher it unless you use it for non-Pesach stuff during the year. But if it's separate just for Pesach, there's no problem with that.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that usually the VOD here puts out a letter saying what milk is kosher for Passover. Rabbi Greenblatt puts it out here locally. So okay. I would have that. I work at Kroger. I'll have that information right before Pesach.
Fantastic. There you have it. It's already been taken care of for everybody. Thank you for that, Frank.
Rabbi, how are you treating vegetarianism?
Not in terms of. Hello?
Just generic terms.
That however a person wishes to conduct their diet is they're more than welcome to keep that.
Any other questions? Just want to be sensitive to everyone's time. We'll take maybe one more question. Okay. Well, Rabbi Eleff, thank you so much. This has been so insightful and so helpful. I'm always available, and as Rabbi Eleff said, that you can call the OU Passover hotline, and the best resource guide. So many of your questions will be answered in the OU Passover guide. There's so many resources online. You can even search by products. So take a look on the OU Passover website there. And just appreciate everybody making the time out to come out tonight. We wish all of you a Chag Kasher Sameach. We hope that everyone has a wonderful Passover. We hope to connect with and see everybody via Zoom before then as well. And wishing everybody a good night. And again, a big yasher koach and a thank you to Rabbi Eleff.
My pleasure. And I look forward to one day meeting everybody in person.
Anytime, please. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Chag Kashruth Sameach.
All right, thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.